Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a Criminally Basic podcast. My name is Megan,
And I'm Hannah.
and today is part 2 of our two-part series on Casey Anthony.
Woo!
Woohoo! Yeah, I won't really spend too much time on the intro here. I don't really think that that's necessary. Let's just dive into it.
Let's do it.
So last time we left off on December 19th of 2008, and that was the day that DNA testing confirmed that the skeletal remains found less than a mile from the family home were in fact Caylee Anthony. Last time I mentioned that Caylee was found wrapped in a blanket and stuffed into bags, but what I didn't mention was that there was duct tape found around her nose and mouth. That, among other things, was enough for the medical examiner, Dr. Garavaglia, also known as Dr. G, to rule the manner of death as homicide.
Okay, let me just say, they didn't even give this poor little girl even a shallow grave.
No,
I
she
felt
was just dumped in the woods. She was found, I believe, less than 20 feet from the road, if my memory is serving me correctly, regardless of whether or not she was murdered. And we'll get into our opinions later, kind of towards the end of this episode. But whether or not she was murdered, the fact that she did not have a proper burial and was just left in
a trash bag.
Casey had been indicted by a grand jury earlier that year in October for murder, according to a CNN editorial research article. So she was already going to trial, but now that there was a body and the manner of death was ruled as a homicide, the case seemed really just open and shut. The public thought she did it, law enforcement thought she did it, and surely a jury of her peers would think she did it as well.
I remember watching this when it was happening, and I was little. I don't exactly how old I was, but I'm like, oh yeah, she did it.
Yeah, I mean, we were born in 97. This happened in 2008. So we were 11 when this
Yeah.
happened? Yeah. Around this time, photos of what Casey had been doing while she had claimed to have been looking for Caylee surfaced. And Hannah, I tell you what, these photos make me very angry.
Disgusting. Like, there's no other way to put it.
So, for people who haven't seen these photos or aren't as familiar with this as we are, there are photos of her out at multiple parties, bars, clubs, even entering a hot body contest, whatever that is, while she's supposedly searching for her missing toddler. During this time as well, she actually got a tattoo. According to a CBS News article by Camille Mann, Casey got a tattoo that says Bella Vita, which is an Italian phrase that translates to beautiful life.
I'm sure her life isn't beautiful now.
Oh, goodness, no. The tattoo artist who gave her the tattoo would testify in court that when Casey came into the appointment, she seemed upbeat and happy, not at all like a worried or grieving parent. There were also some diary entries from around this time that were particularly suspect. One says, quote, "I have no regrets, just a bit worried. I completely trust my own judgment. I know that I made the right decision. I just hope that the end justifies the means. This is the happiest I have been in a very long time." End quote. Now, while this does seem rather circumstantial, and the entries were presented in court according to a People.com article by Steve Helling, the defense actually stated that the quote I just read, as well as some other kind of suspicious entries and notes, were written in 2003 and not in 2008. So she would have been, I believe, 16 at the time that she wrote those, or supposedly wrote those. They're often presented in documentaries and articles and stuff as evidence, but since they were contested in court and it couldn't really be proven when she wrote them, I won't really spend any time on these. Before we get into the trial part of this and the bombshells that came with it, I wanted to spend some time talking about Casey's parents, George and Cindy. As one can expect, this whole ordeal was really taxing for them. They had to deal with constantly being hounded by reporters and random people who would literally just show up to their house.
Yeah, I've seen, I think it was a news video of like people just banging on their door, calling them child or baiting child murderer, you know what happened to her, all this stuff.
Right. There were totally several instances where there were some really intense altercations with people who did not respect their boundaries. And just like you said, screaming at them that they had raised a baby killer or were baby killers themselves. This all compounded into a really tragic event by January of 2009. So, not even a year after Kaylee was last seen, George Anthony was just done with it all. He hadn't just lost his grandchild, he had really lost his daughter too. Not to mention the entire country just holding you partially, if not fully responsible for Kaylee's death.
It absolutely did.
So on January 23rd, George actually attempted suicide. I won't go into details here. I don't really think that that's necessary, but he did thankfully survive that attempt.
That's so sad.
The trial of Casey Anthony began on May 25th, 2011, with opening statements from the prosecution and the defense. Now, this was a death penalty case, so the stakes for all of the parties involved were especially high. There were people who actually started lining up in the middle of the night on each day of the trial to try to get into the courtroom to see everything play out.
Like Ted Bundy stuff there.
Exactly. That is totally the connection that I made. So even if they couldn't get into the courtroom, and I don't 100% know if they allowed like spectators in the courtroom or not, but what I can for sure say though is that there were people outside that courthouse
Yeah.
constantly. The prosecution's opening statement was honestly exactly as was suspected. It pulls on the heartstrings, it lays out the broad strokes of their case and what they believe actually happened. Specifically, they call out the duct tape. The lead prosecutor, Linda Burdick, says, quote, "The evidence in this case will establish that there is no other reason for the placement of multiple pieces of duct tape over this child's face, mouth, and nose, other than the specific intent to end that child's life." End quote. She also lays out the motive, that Kaylee was essentially in the way of Casey's life, and that the only way to get her quote unquote out of the way, so to speak, would be to kill her. So the defense, on the other hand, goes with a slightly different approach. In an American court of law, the jury is only supposed to convict if they believe that the defendant is guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt. So that makes the job of the prosecutor really tough. They have the burden of proof. The defense doesn't have to prove that anything happened. That's not really their job. All the defense has to do is provide doubt to the prosecution's statements or theories. That's why defense attorney Jose Baez opens with this.
Everyone wants to know what happened. How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before ever reporting her child missing? It's insane. It's bizarre. Something's just not right about that. Well, the answer is actually relatively simple. She never was missing. Kaylee Anthony died on June 16, 2008, when she drowned in her family's swimming pool. Well, the reason we're all here is because not of the commonality of this tragedy, but of the uniqueness of the family that it happened to. You will hear about ugly things, secret things, things that people don't speak about, things that Casey never spoke about. On June 16, 2008, after Kaylee died, Casey did what she's been doing all her life, or for most of it, hiding her pain, going into that dark corner and pretending that she does not live in the situation that she's living in. This family must keep its secrets quiet. And it all began when Casey was 8 years old and her father came into her room and began to touch her inappropriately. This child, who at 8 years old, learned to lie immediately. She could be 13 years old, have her father's penis in her mouth, and then go to school and play with the other kids as if nothing ever happened. That will help you understand why no one knew that her child was dead.
What a bombshell.
So this is insane, right?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely insane.
So, can you imagine being George Anthony sitting in that courtroom and hearing yourself being accused of molesting your daughter?
I don't know how that man was so calm, how he didn't just burst up and be like, "Excuse me, what?"
No. So, George would actually say later, and I mean years later, in a Crime Watch Daily interview with Chris Hansen, that the defense had actually come to him before and wanted him to take the blame for Kaylee's death and say that she had drowned in his pool and he helped cover it up.
What the hell? I hate saying this, but unfortunately, swimming pool drownings in Florida are extremely common.
They happen.
They happen. If that's what happened, why didn't you call 911 right away?
Exactly. If it's an accident, then you have nothing to hide. You may be charged with like child endangerment or something if you know it's proven that you, I don't know, didn't take the proper safety precautions. But kids get in places and things happen.
Things happen. Unfortunately, those happen.
So I want to be really clear here that the molestation accusation was never proven. There are many, many people in George's life who will say that that never ever happened. To be fair, victims of sexual assault and abuse and all of that, often people don't know,
Yeah.
but in the opinions of many attorneys and psychology experts, this is believed to have been said more so for the shock value of anything and to put the blame on someone else other than Casey.
And I absolutely hate that they did that.
Right. So this is kind of what's called the abuse excuse. And it's a touchy subject. I won't really go super into it because abuse, especially really traumatic abuse like that, can make you hide things and really impacts a person significantly throughout their life. Is it an excuse for something happening? No, but defense attorneys specifically will sometimes try to use it in order to gain sympathy with the jury.
That's what I hated about Jose Baez's defense style. Is that the
Like his defense
yeah?
style, I guess.
He would bring up stuff and then never bring it up again.
Yes, exactly. First of all, he has a really great connection with the jury. That's a big thing that I think in this trial the prosecution was lacking, was a real connection with the jury. I will say that there was a lack of physical evidence in this case. When Kaylee was found, her remains were dry. Therefore, there was no tissue mass, there was no muscles, no nothing other than just dry bones. According to the medical examiner team, those remains had to have been out there for months. Dr. G actually says in a documentary that I found on the Film Rise movie YouTube channel. I don't think that's where it originated, but that's the only place that I could find it. She says that for her, the duct tape was the most damning thing about the evidence found at the dump site. She says that the tape, even though the adhesive had decomposed, was still actually holding the jaw together because of the hair that was tangled in the mesh of the tape. So since it was still on the skeleton, Dr. G determined that it had to have been put there before the body began to decompose. Even though she couldn't say for certain that the duct tape was put there to suffocate Kaylee, she also couldn't see any other reason for it being there.
First off, that's absolutely amazing that they can tell that.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool. Not murder cool, but like
It's fascinating that our forensic capabilities have come this far and that people just know these things, you know?
like that you study them. That's so cool.
It was revealed in court that there was no definitive cause of death. There was nothing on the bones that could have even pointed in any direction, like no knife wounds, for instance. No, nothing like that. They even actually tested the bones for any drugs, but none were found.
That's crazy. You can test bones.
So typically, when you test bones, you're testing the marrow in the bones.
Oh.
But unfortunately, Kaylee had been out there for so long that there was only a skeleton. No, nothing else. No bone marrow, no nothing. So you can test bones for drugs, but after that long being out in the elements, they weren't super hopeful. that they would get anything back, but it's worth trying anyway because, I mean, when you have a dead toddler, you're going to try anything, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Another question, and this could be me misreading some information and stuff. I think I read somewhere that she was in like kind of like it was a forest, but it was also kind of like a swampy area.
Yeah, so I think Florida terrain, kind of boggy, kind of swampy, wooded. I mean, here in Kentucky we have lots of wooded areas, but think kind of more marshy
Oh, okay, yeah.
with that. Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't like she was in a very stereotypical swamp with like uh, standing water and alligators. I don't know, but it was more marshy, swampy, boggy.
Yeah, because I think I read at one point she was water might have been covering her.
And water totally could have been covering her. I mean, she was out there for at least 6 months.
Yeah.
The prosecution relies on the lies that Casey told, the smell in the car, the fact that Casey didn't report her child missing or dead, and of course, the duct tape. There was actually a Google search from the family computer inside the Anthony home for chloroform, which Cindy Anthony would actually claim that she made. She said that she had been searching for something else and then accidentally clicked chloroform, or it came up as like a recommended search and then she clicked it just out of curiosity. I mean, I can say that I've clicked on things out of curiosity, so that's not entirely out of the picture. But again, it's another one of those circumstantial things that could just be explained away. So the defense then just pokes holes into the prosecution's theory and claims. Specifically, going back to the duct tape, since I personally believe that that's a really important part of this, they say that the duct tape could have been used to bind the bag that Kaylee was found in, and then it just like fell on her face as the bag decomposed. However, the prosecution disagrees with this. They come back with the fact that, like I mentioned earlier, the jaw was still attached to the skull. There is no bone that holds your jaw to your face. Once a body decomposes, the jaw falls off because it's heavy. Kaylee's jaw was still attached to her skull, and all of her teeth were still in her mouth because of the duct tape. Therefore, it had to have been put on her face before or during the earliest stages of decomposition, according to that same documentary I mentioned earlier.
Well, I mean, there's no other way.
Exactly. And I think the fact that her teeth were all still there, because baby teeth don't have roots. You know,
Yeah.
as your adult teeth grow in, they have like really deep roots and don't fall out nearly as easily as baby teeth do. You know, they're not meant to fall out. So the fact that her little teeny tiny baby teeth were still there, it's heartbreaking and horrible,
Yeah.
but it's a really good notch in the prosecution's case. To combat the forensics, the defense calls in Dr. Werner Spitz, who performed another autopsy on Kaylee's body, but this time for the defense. He, according to the forensics documentary, dwells on the fact that Dr. G did not open up Kaylee's skull during the autopsy. Dr. G says that she did this because there wasn't really any need to. She said that she could see what she needed to see via flashlights and mirrors and such, and it was an empty skull, so there was no reason to open it up. Dr. Spitz stays on this point for a long time and actually calls Dr. G's work shoddy. Dr. G doesn't get to go back on the stand to defend her work, and actually, she wanted to say that the skull most likely would have fallen apart if they had tried to open it. And side note, that's exactly what happened during Dr. Spitz's autopsy.
We love Dr. G. We stand Dr. G.
She honestly is a wonderful woman. I kind of went down a Dr. G rabbit hole because she like had a TV show and has done like all sorts of like documentaries and stuff. So I love her.
So cool. I really like her.
We stand Dr. G over here on the Criminally Basic cult.
Yes, yes, we do.
So, wrapping up this very long and twisted case are the closing statements by the prosecution and by the defense. The prosecution's closing statement hammers in the fact that for Casey, Kaylee was just in the way. But yet again, Jose Baez, the leading defense attorney, comes in with some statements that are both admittedly brilliant from a defense point of view, but kind of questionable as far as morals go. And we'll play a few clips of those statements here.
Here we are at the end of our journey. And I have to tell you that I probably think you have more questions than you have answers. And if you recall at opening statements, the final thing that I told you, at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, the one question will never be answered. The key question in this case will never be answered. It can never be proven. And that is, how did Kaylee die?
Okay.
I shouldn't be left when you're done with more questions than answers.
No, but I mean, unfortunately, he's right, though.
He is right, though.
Because if the prosecution couldn't prove their theory, couldn't prove what they think happened.
Yeah, he's right.
Let's go on to the second clip, and then
Okay.
we'll we'll discuss.
Your rules of deliberation. What the law is that this case must not be decided for or against anyone because you feel sorry for anyone or are angry at anyone.
Okay.
So basically what he's saying there is that you have to take your emotion out of your deliberation. That's, again, a fair point. Oftentimes, in especially high-profile cases, when you have something that is as touchy as a child's death, jurors can often, anyone can often allow their emotions to run wild because there's a dead kid. Who couldn't get emotional over that? But what he's saying is, you can't convict someone just because you're angry.
Yeah. So, which, understandable, but
But still, I think that he's just bringing attention to the fact that he's claiming that the prosecution has made them so emotional that they need to take all of that away in order to be able to rationally deliberate. Which, yeah.
Yeah.
But and there's Okay, next one.
Don't speculate. Don't guess. It has to be proven to you beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. If you don't know what happened, it wasn't proven. We don't want you to tell us what you think happened. We want you to tell us what was proven happened. And that's the difference here. Because you know what? We can go on and speculate all day long as to the different theories that were posed before you, as to the different possibilities. But the truth of the matter is it must be what was proven. There are no mysteries to solve here. There should be no mystery before you right now. If you have questions, then it was not proven. And that's as simple as it goes.
So basically what he's saying here is that if you as a juror still have questions as to what happened, then the prosecution, they didn't prove anything. Because what this is a murder trial. It's not whether or not she's a good person, whether or not she made the right decisions. It's whether or not she killed her kid. And if the prosecution cannot prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Casey purposefully killed her kid, because this was a first-degree murder death penalty case. First degree means premeditated.
Yeah.
So if they can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was the one who actively caused her child's death, then the prosecution didn't do your job. And the very frustrating thing about this is that I can't necessarily disagree with what he's saying because he's making valid points here.
He is making valid points. I do disagree with one thing. He's like, there's no mystery here. Yeah, there is a mystery. How did that little Kaylee die?
I think what he's referring to is that there shouldn't be a mystery here. Yeah. That there's no mystery with how he thinks that they should vote.
Yeah. Oh, I hate agreeing with him.
Do I think that this defense lawyer is brilliant? Yes. But do I kind of think he's sleazy as hell. Also, yes. July 5th, 2011, Casey Anthony is found not guilty. Much to the surprise of
Everyone?
the entire United States, I think we've made our positions rather clear.
Yep.
To be even more clear than I think we have been, anything that we have stated that has not been backed up by a source is entirely our opinion.
Yeah. Our opinion, no one else's, just ours.
Right. So take that as you will. We are not professionals.
Do you want to get into theories?
Let's get into theories. Hannah, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I don't think it was a swimming pool accident by any means. I think if it was, they would have called right away.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happened was it wasn't purposefully done.
Really?
I think she accidentally had give her something to put her to sleep so she could do whatever. And unfortunately, she just gave her too much of whatever said allegedly. I don't know. This isn't fact. I'm theorizing.
Mm-hmm.
And she got scared.
Right.
And that's when she put duct tape on her and stuff. Well, no, I don't think she dumped her body right away. I think she kept it in the trunk of her car.
Right, because there was the smell.
And then when people started to notice, she's like, oh. And I think all of it was made up.
Yeah, I have a slightly different opinion than you do, actually, surprisingly. Because we typically agree on these sorts of things.
You.
So I do think that it was purposeful. I do think that it was premeditated.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why I think it was premeditated is I keep coming back to the duct tape.
Yeah.
And there is no scenario in my mind, in my personal opinion, that makes sense as to why that duct tape would be around the nose and mouth other than to murder.
You don't put duct tape around someone's mouth just for shits and giggles.
Right. And I mean, even if she was already dead, there isn't any reason to put that. It's not like that tape was holding something there. I come back to her behavior afterwards. That to me is another huge nail in her coffin.
He was not upset about losing that kid.
No.
There's no doubt in my mind.
No, absolutely not. And even interviews that she does today, because she has done a few interviews. There was one that I saw, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, so please don't quote me on this. But there was one where she said that she still doesn't really know what happened. And I think that is the most frustrating thing, because she is the only person who knows what happened.
Yeah.
So
how do you not know?
It has been argued or theorized that something happened that was really traumatic, and so her brain's natural response was to forget it.
Yeah.
To have sort of a dissociative amnesia sort of episode around it. That in the psychology field is debated a lot as to whether or not those amnesic barriers do exist, and if a person really can forget things. Because I mean, in cases like this, it's kind of used almost as an excuse. And since it's not 100% agreed on within the field of psychology, I really hesitate to put any sort of merit into it. But I don't like this woman.
I don't either. I just ew.
And it comes back to the remorse thing too. There's no remorse.
Yeah, none.
And I mean, not even remorse. Even if she didn't do it, if she didn't kill her child, if there was an accident, a tragic accident, there's no grief.
Yeah, no.
I don't understand. If you don't want your child,
adoption.
There are so many options where you can find your child a parent who won't kill them.
Yeah.
It is so frustrating. It's like the Baby Gabriel episode that we did a few weeks ago, that if you don't want your kid, why not transfer parental rights to your parents, or to your to your partner if you have one, or go through an adoption agency to give up your parental rights in that way. There are so many options, and yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but like at least you're not hated by an entire country.
Even in 2021, people still hate that woman's guts.
The name Casey Anthony is a household name. I have no more words for this.
We do have something, Megan, that I told you about.
Yeah, so recently currently she's living in Florida still. Side note, please don't go harass this woman. That's not going to do any good. So she is currently living in Florida, and she's been living with actually the lead private investigator on her case. She's been living with him for a while. Not quite sure the nature of their relationship. I don't think that's ever been publicly disclosed. I don't really care. She and this private investigator have opened, or have applied to open, rather, a private investigating business together.
And keep in mind, this private investigator also worked on the OJ. Did you mention that?
I don't think I did, actually. No, so this private investigator was on the OJ case as well.
I had actually found that out one day. I was going to order some food from a local business. Support your local businesses or small businesses during this very tragic time. But yeah, went to go look for their number, and that was on my front page of Google. And I'm like, who would want to go to her for private investigating?
I have no idea.
How to hide a body 101? All alleged speculation, don't.
Right. Yeah. All right. Are you ready to end this horrible experience?
Absolutely. Let's end this now.
Thank you for listening to A Criminally Basic Podcast. If you want to learn more, you can find us at A Criminally Basic Podcast on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
And check out our sources as well as photos on our website at www.acriminallybasicpodcast.podbean.com.
Thank you for listening.